Quando Rondo has been through one of the most chaotic journeys in recent hip-hop memory. From fame and street ties to violence, loss, and finally federal prison, his story has taken turns no one saw coming. The most recent news came from behind bars, where multiple reports say he was beaten inside federal prison. And the reason behind it has nothing to do with money, beef, or King Von. It came down to one thing: walking away from the gang he once called family. Before everything fell apart, Quando was known for being deeply connected to the Rolling 60 Crips, one of the most recognized sets in Los Angeles. He represented the lifestyle proudly: the music, the blue flags, the attitude. But all that changed after years of violence and loss. Somewhere along the line, he realized the same people he thought were protecting him were the ones putting his life in danger. That realization led to a decision that's almost unheard of in the street world. He decided to leave the gang and start over. To understand why that decision nearly cost him his life, we have to go back to where it all started. August 19th, 2022, Beverly Hills, California. Quando Rondo was in town working on music, meeting with people, doing what most rappers do when they come to LA. But Los Angeles has a long-standing street rule. If you're a known name and you're connected to gang politics, you're supposed to check in. It's not official, but it's how the city operates. You show respect to the locals, you get respect back. And since Quando was tied to the Rolling 60s, he did exactly that. He let them know he was in the city, met up with some members, and thought everything was handled. What he didn't know was that checking in was the very thing that would put him in danger. Around this time, Lil Durk still hadn't moved on from the death of King Von, his friend, his artist, and one of the biggest losses the Chicago rap scene had seen. According to multiple reports and federal investigations, Durk had deep ties in Los Angeles. He wasn't just visiting the city for shows. He had relationships with powerful people on the ground, including known members of major LA sets. And that network allegedly included people with connections to the same Crip set Quando had checked in with. When word got around that Quando was in town, the information about his exact location leaked. Federal investigators later claimed that someone from within the set gave up his whereabouts, what car he was driving, where he was going, and when. That single piece of information was all that was needed. On August 19th, Quando and his cousin Lil Pop pulled into a Beverly Hills gas station. Moments later, an SUV pulled up beside them, and multiple shooters opened fire. The attack was fast and professional. Lil Pop was killed on the spot. He was only 24 years old. Quando survived, but the trauma from that day changed everything. After the shooting, Quando found out the truth. The same gang he thought would protect him had allegedly sold him out. The people who were supposed to have his back had given his location to his enemies. His cousin died because he trusted them. That betrayal hit deeper than anything else. It forced him to see that the loyalty he believed in wasn't real. The system he thought would protect him was built on fear, power, and money, not brotherhood. That was the turning point. Quando stopped claiming the Rolling 60. He stopped showing flags, stopped using gang language, and started speaking publicly about the truth behind the lifestyle. He said what most people are too scared to say, that the gang life was a trap, that it promised protection but delivered death, that it convinced young men to give their lives for something that would never give anything back. He started reading, studying, and praying. He converted to Islam and began talking about peace and discipline. He wasn't preaching for attention. You could tell he meant it. He'd seen what the streets really offered: betrayal, loss, and endless revenge. After losing his cousin and nearly his own life, he decided he was done with all of it. But leaving a gang isn't as simple as making an announcement. In that world, dropping your flag, publicly walking away, is considered one of the biggest violations you can commit. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how famous you are, or how much you've changed. Once you're in, you're supposed to stay in. And Quando breaking that rule meant there would be consequences. Not long after stepping away from the gang, he faced new problem. In December 2023, federal agents arrested him on drug conspiracy charges. The case wasn't about him personally selling or moving drugs. It was about people in his circle who were. The government claimed he knew about the operation and didn't report it. Under federal conspiracy law, that was enough to charge him. Even if you're not the one committing the crime, knowing and staying silent can make you part of it. Prosecutors wanted 20 years. Quando's lawyers argued that he was changing his life, that he was no longer involved in street activity, that his faith and new focus showed he was trying to move on. Eventually, the judge agreed to a reduced sentence, 2 years and 9 months. Still time behind bars, but nothing compared to what he could have faced. Even in the middle of all that, he refused to cooperate. He didn't name names, didn't give up anyone, didn't try to trade information for freedom. He decided to take his sentence and serve it. But when he got to federal prison, a new problem waited for him. Word had already spread that Quando Rondo was no longer part of the Rolling 60s. To them, that was betrayal. In federal prison, the same street politics exists, only magnified. Every yard has structure, rules, and people in charge. When you denounce a gang publicly, especially one with reach inside the system, it doesn't get forgotten. Quando was recognized quickly. Everyone knew his story. The shooting, the conversion, the interviews, the decision to walk away. Eventually, he got jumped by members of his former set. Multiple sources confirmed he was attacked and violated for leaving the gang. It wasn't about money or old beef. It was about making an example. The message was clear. Once you're in, you don't leave. But ironically, the attack only proved the point he had been trying to make. The gang life wasn't built on loyalty. It was built on control. Quando left because he realized it. And even behind bars, that same system showed its true face. Despite everything, the death of Little Pob, the setup, the shooting, the charges, the time, Quando Rondo has continued to stay focused. People close to him say he's been keeping to himself, praying, studying, and avoiding drama. In a place where violence is everywhere, that alone takes discipline. He's serving his time and preparing to come home. His transformation has been one of the most genuine in hip-hop. This isn't about PR or image cleanup. It's about a man who's been through every possible version of loss, losing friends, family, money, freedom, and still finding peace through faith and reflection. He's made it clear that once he's released, he's done with the streets for good. There are still people who doubt that. Some think once he's free, the pressure, the old ties, and the temptations will pull him back in. Others believe this version of him is permanent, a man who's finally learned that nothing in the streets lasts forever. But no matter where you stand, it's hard to deny the growth. Quando Rondo's story is more than a tale about betrayal and revenge. It's about what happens when someone decides to walk away from the system that built them. It's about realizing that loyalty isn't real when it only exists through fear. And it's about the price you pay for finally wanting peace in a world that doesn't forgive you for it. He's still serving his time, still staying quiet, still holding on to his faith. And when he steps back into the world, the question won't be whether he's changed. It'll be whether the world around him is ready to let him move on. Because no matter how far you run from the streets, they always find a way to remind you they're still watching. There's also the part nobody sees. The day-to-day structure that keeps him steady. Federal time moves slow. Mornings start early, count after count. The same routine repeating until release day. That kind of repetition can break people, or it can build them. For him, it's become a framework. Prayer at set times, reading to keep his mind sharp, short workouts to stay centered, and distance from the noise so he doesn't get pulled into something that cost him more months. Not dramatic, not headline material, but that's where most of the change actually happens. Outside the walls, the conversation keeps shifting. Some fans say he did the only thing he could, step away before the streets took everything. Others insist there's no walking back from affiliations that deep. Labels, promoters, and platforms watch all of that closely. They don't just look at music, they measure risk. Who's in the room? Who's outside the venue? Who's waiting in the parking lot after the show? If he stays on the path he's on, that risk picture starts to calm down. If he slips, the doors close fast. That's the reality of business on the other side of headlines. What could help most after release is structure that isn't tied to survival. A small circle with clear roles. A manager who says no more than yes. Security that answers to him, not to old relationships. Studios booked at reasonable hours, not overnight chaos. A plan for how content gets made, how shows get routed, how travel happens. That makes it harder for old patterns to creep back in. Pair that with a few community steps, quiet donations, youth studio time, a few private visits with at-risk kids, not for cameras, just to keep perspective in front of him. That kind of grounding has a way of cutting through the noise when pressure hits. Musically, there's a lane if he wants it. People connect to honesty, and he has it. Not just pain, but the kind of specifics that can't be faked. The sound of a door shutting at count, the weight of a letter that changes your day, the silence after a visit ends. If he puts that into records with focus, keeps the features tight, and avoids anything that drags the message backward, he can rebuild without pretending the past didn't happen. It's not about rebranding, it's about alignment. The story and the songs have to match. Legally, keeping things clean matters more than momentum. Probation terms, travel approvals, check-ins, curfews, the details most people skip over. That's the difference between a tour that moves and a tour that gets canceled after night one. He'll need a legal team looped into operations before dates are booked, not after. That's how you avoid headlines that erase 6 months of good choices in one afternoon. There's a personal side to all of this too. Grief doesn't run on schedules. The loss that pushed him to change isn't going away just because time passes. It shows up in the middle of a session, or when the phone doesn't ring, or when a song pulls up a memory he didn't plan to face. Having a few people around him who understand that, not yes men, not internet commentators, is what keeps a good week from turning into a bad month. That's not weakness, that's maintenance. If he stays focused, he can come home to a smaller but stronger foundation. Fewer faces, clearer rules, better outcomes. The audience for that is bigger than people think. There are listeners who've been through some version of the same thing. Maybe not the headlines, but the pressure, the choices, the cost. They don't need perfection, they need truth that doesn't glamorize what almost took everything from him.